May 1960. Westminster Abbey. Princess Margaret walks toward the altar. Beside her stands Antony Armstrong-Jones, a photographer, a commoner, modern. Not the man the court would have chosen for her, but perhaps, for that very reason, the man the world wanted to see. It is the first royal wedding ever broadcast on television. 300 million people watch around the world. A princess finally allowed to marry after Peter Townsend, a man from outside the old order. An image meant to say, the monarchy can change. Then the honeymoon begins. 6 weeks in the Caribbean, aboard the royal yacht Britannia. Sunday, ease, a new life. And while the world sees the beginning of a marriage, a child is born in London. Not Margaret's child, and not a child of this marriage. On the 26th of May 1960, in the middle of the honeymoon, Camilla Fry gives birth to a daughter, Polly. Camilla is the wife of Jeremy Fry, Antony's closest friend. Officially, Polly is a Fry child. But a question hangs over her birth. A question that will not be answered for 44 years. For Margaret, Antony was no ordinary groom. He belonged to good society, but not to the inner circle of the crown. Eton, Cambridge, then photography. He moved among artists, actors, fashion, and magazines. Close enough to the establishment to be accepted. Free enough not to be fully controllable. For Margaret, that was the attraction. For the court, it was a risk. They meet at a dinner party in 1958. In 1959, the court invites him to Balmoral. The public believes he is only there to photograph the family. Soon after, they are engaged. The court had reined Margaret in once before. Peter Townsend was divorced. A marriage would have meant a crisis. Margaret had to choose love or rank. She chose duty. Or she was left no real choice. After that, Antony seemed like the solution. Not divorced, not old, not politically dangerous. A modern man for a modern princess. But modern men bring their own disorder with them. Jeremy Fry was even meant to be best man. But shortly before the wedding, he dropped out. An old conviction had become public. Another man took his place. At the time, it was a footnote. No one connected the name with what was to come. The palace had its picture. The friendship did not break. Margaret and Antony remained regular guests of Jeremy Fry at his house near Bath, the same house where Camilla lived, and her daughter. No one spoke the question aloud. In 1961, Margaret has her son David. Antony takes the title Earl of Snowdon. Now he is officially part of the royal institution. The outsider is given rank. The marriage takes shape, but not everyone accepts the photographer. Parts of the press disapprove of the marriage to a commoner. Inside the palace, to some he remains the man from outside. But a facade is not yet a foundation. Soon it becomes clear that Antony does not fill the role as expected. He wants to work, to travel, to create, to slip away. Margaret, by contrast, lives in a world where every withdrawal is noted. She is free enough to be unhappy, but not free enough to act unobserved. When Antony leaves, it looks like temperament. When Margaret reacts, it looks like scandal. In 1964, their daughter Sarah is born. From the outside, the family is complete. A son, a daughter, a title, a royal home. But behind the scenes, the marriage runs in two directions. Antony spends more and more time outside their shared life. Margaret suffers more visibly. The distance becomes part of court routine. Everyone knows something. No one says enough. Because a divorce close to the Queen is not a family problem. It is an image of state. The palace hopes the two can live separate lives, as long as the picture holds. Not to resolve, only to conceal. But Margaret is not a quiet figure. She drinks, she provokes, she is closely watched. And the more visible her pain becomes, the easier it is to cast her as the guilty one. Antony stays harder to pin down, often absent, charming when he wants to be, and not the Queen's sister. That protects him. Then comes Moustique. The island is Margaret's refuge, far from London and from the court. There, Roddy Llewellyn appears, younger, unburdened, dangerous, because he can be photographed. When the pictures of Margaret and Roddy become public, the press has its story. The princess, the young lover, the tropical scandal. But the photograph does not show the beginning. It shows only the moment when the hidden becomes visible. In 1976, the separation becomes public. Antony acts on his own, before the court can manage it cleanly. The palace loses the rhythm, and with it, control over the timing. In 1978, the divorce follows. Not some distant relative, but the Queen's sister, the woman whose love life had once become a constitutional question. Antony marries again only months later. Margaret stays in the eye of the press. He moves on. She carries the tragedy. For years, the story is told this way. Margaret as the difficult princess. Margaret as the wounded woman. And Antony as the fascinating photographer who never fit the cage. But in 2004, the question is answered. A DNA test shows Jeremy Fry was not Polly's father. The father was Antony Armstrong-Jones. Both men had denied it at first. Only after Jeremy Fry was gone did Antony admit the paternity. With that, the honeymoon of 1960 takes on a second meaning. While Margaret set off into her new life as a young wife, another couple's daughter had already been born. Not just any couple, but the closest friend. Jeremy Fry is no longer just a minor figure. Camilla Fry, no longer just a name. Polly, no longer just a child from another family. They show that the official story was incomplete. The cameras filmed Westminster Abbey. The viewers saw a princess. The court saw a solution. Margaret, perhaps, saw a second chance. But something else remained of that picture. A date, a birth, a DNA test, and a marriage that did not break only when the world noticed, but perhaps already, before it began.